I'm realizing it's been just about 1 year since I made a video showing our very simple, unflattering, but functional root cellar. And so a year later I thought it'd be nice to give a review of what seems to have worked for us, what the current state of affairs are, and what sort of things didn't work. I will say overall, been really pleased. Last year we had a tremendous number of potatoes. I'll link here to that first video so you can get a background of how this was all built. I won't go into that in this video, so if you want that background, check that out. But real simple with the pallets. This was loaded with potatoes last year. This year we had near total crop failure on potatoes, but we got enough that there are some crates nicely filled. We're saving seed, like actual true potato seed now, and so we're going to be starting them from actual seed. I think we'll get better crops that way. But last year the potatoes lasted beautifully in the root cellar. I believe it was until May we were eating potatoes out of here. This year we don't have that many, but where we lack in potatoes, we got really nice kohlrabi crop, tons and tons of garlic. And the thing that's new as of this year that I'm feeling is very promising is we're using these simple crates that I found on Craigslist and filling them with soil from the garden where certain crops are growing. And you can see, for example, here's 1, 2, 3 crates with leeks where we put some soil in, packed in the leeks, cut their tops off. Sasha made stock out of that, and then filled them back with soil. Here's one where there's some beautiful carrots from the garden, and they're basically planted back into the earth. And they really seem happy with this. So when it's time to make dinner, you can see here's one where Sasha wanted some beets, and so there's a little beet-shaped hole in the soil. And these crops, as long as they're buried in the soil, there you go, seem to be very happy in here. Here we are in mid-December. I think as long as we make sure this soil doesn't dry out, maybe we bring some fresh soil to top things off, these should just coast through the winter. I bartered for some carrots from a farm, and we need to get them in soil because these are fine, but they're starting to get soft already, and I think that's what you get when they sit exposed to the air. So definitely lesson learned there is root crops really seem to thrive if we can afford the space and time to actually bury them back in the soil. So that's been promising. So here's some more, I think these are some rutabagas, really nice big beauties, whole bunch of radishes, storage radishes. And this is also where I'm overwintering. You can't really see it back in there, but there's 2 containers of yacon, where I talk about in another video, which wouldn't survive in our soil outdoors. It's supposed to be 15 degrees in the next few nights, but down in here it should survive and be ready for the spring. And you can see we've got, even though we planted a lot of garlic, there is ample amounts left. Trying to store the garlic a little higher in here because it doesn't need to be as cold as the rest of the things. We probably have about maybe 100 pounds to enjoy. Thanks to all of you who ordered our seed garlic. It was really nice to be able to sell that and get that out into the world. And we've got a nice amount to share with friends and family. One thing I'll say I'm very, very pleased is how dependably and straightforward our system for having the cold air come in. It's about 25 degrees Fahrenheit outside right now, and if you could only imagine, I put my hand here and it just feels like ice cold refrigerator air just dumping in. That's all there is. This whole system is cold air. Well, obviously there's more to it with the insulation and all that, but from the standpoint of making it cold, there it is. There's our refrigerator. A tube to the outside. One thing we learned this year is Sasha made a bunch of sauerkraut in the summer when the crops were ripe, and there just simply wasn't enough cold air coming in, and so the sauerkraut actually rotted, and so we had to send that to the chickens. Our takeaway from that is to try to grow crops that will come to fruition much later in the season, October, November, and make sauerkrauts then. So that it can be cold enough for them to enjoy it. You can see it's very stable, right around 43 Fahrenheit in here. If I insulated better, it could get colder, but that's a fine enough temperature for now. I think the humidity could be a little higher for the crops, but since the things that are there you go. Since the crops that are most sensitive to drying out are buried in soil, which is very easy to locally add water where needed, that lower than ideal humidity is actually great. Interesting. It's climbing quickly now. I wonder if it's because I opened the door in here. Another thing I've learned, yacon, the tubers themselves, I dug these out when I made that video. They're already getting very soft. So it seems like a kind of crop, if you're going to harvest in the fall, you want to enjoy it in the fall. That is not incredible storage right there for it to be. Maybe I need to bury these. Whereas the oca, which I harvested in that video, are still super crisp. They look the exact same as when I took them out. So lots to learn there. I thought while I'm down here I'd share, well, you see some other ferments going on, hot peppers, some sauerkrauts in the fall. I would share on the outside of this. So again, I'm cleaning down here, but it's nothing spectacular. It's the reality of how our basement looks. But we've got lots and lots of vinegars forming from cider from last year, lots of dried herbs. And then something I'm very excited about, I talked in a couple videos about processing nuts, and I would guess now in our basement we have about 1,000 pounds of hickories and black walnuts, butternuts, Carpathian walnuts, all hanging. We're learning the hard lesson this year that mice have discovered this and they're really excited about it. I don't blame them, so we're finding hickories hidden here or there. It's a bummer to have to do it, but I'm setting mouse traps up. So these are hanging, so the only way they're going to get to them is to climb over and come down. So I'm going to start setting traps on all of these with peanut butter, and hopefully we can reduce the mouse population. It's a bummer that we can't cohabitate with them, but mouse poop does not, it just won't work. So they've got to go. But that's a nice pile of the nuts hanging in this room, and I'll show in the other room where the rest of them are. So this is the other room in our basement, the laundry room. You can see the insane amount of work that Sasha put into canning all these tomatoes and making salsas and jams and jellies. And we've got some honeys and maple syrups on the top shelf. It's a whole lot of really rich meals to be enjoyed from that set there. And then more squash. The squash does not want to be in a root cellar. I think if it's that cool, it'll actually rot, from what I understand of it. So these are on shelves in a room that's closer to 55, 60, 55 Fahrenheit on average, and a little bit lower humidity. And you can see we've got nuts. This needs to be dealt with sooner than later. This is a great way to ask for mice to come in, is to have them in piles where they can walk around on them. So the next round will be for me to make more poles that span the joists up in the ceiling and hang these sacks of nuts. Alright, no giggling. And get them hanging so we can use these shelves for other things. So all in all, it's a challenging growing season. In some ways it was wet at times and cool, and then very hot and dry at times. But overall we got a lot of food, and this whole system that we're looking at stores our food completely passively. As long as we don't have absolutely catastrophically extreme weather, most of these things should survive the winter. The nut should last us 3 to 5 years. The squash should last us until, February, March. And the things we looked at in the root cellar should definitely get us to the next growing season. So a lot of food security. It's very comforting to have this sort of setup. So we've enjoyed it, and I encourage you to look into, if you've got a basement space, pardon the sweeping pan, but again, this is the northeast corner of our basement where we lost 12 by 8 feet of the space for me to frame this out with reclaimed and bartered insulation panels, very little carpentry skill, and that's basically a huge refrigerator for our winter needs. A lot of resiliency there, I feel. Thank you for watching, and hope you have a place to store food for the winter.